Go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. It's late in the day, halfway through the conference, so we're going to try and be lively. We're going to have you guys engaged in a little bit of discussion and feedback here in a moment. But this is a session all about the implications or applications of Drawdown Georgia within higher ed. This is a great, like this morning's business compact, a great kind of coalition within Drawdown Georgia. I'm very excited about the guests that we have here to talk, who I'll introduce in a second. Just to give you a quick overview of what we'll do for this session is we'll do quick introductions. I'll let you know who these wonderful panelists are. And then each of them will speak about some of the tremendous successes and challenges that they've had in implementing Drawdown Georgia or just carbon emission drawdown projects in general. That will appropriately inspire all of us, and hopefully you will all glean at least a few things that you want to take home and implement within your institutions and communities. After they've all had a chance to share and inspire us, we'll have about a 10-minute Q&A before we have breakouts to discuss what are the potentials for Drawdown Georgia higher ed to help us accelerate climate solution implementation within our institutions, but also together collectively. And so this is really an important moment for us to get those collective ideas and come out with at least one or two strategies that we can move forward with as a group. Today is a great day, as you saw, those of you who were able to make the morning plenary, for really understanding the utility of Drawdown Georgia as a mental model to address climate solutions. So those of you who are new to it, I just want to briefly introduce you to 20 out of 100 climate solutions that were initially identified by Paul Hawken in his great book, Drawdown, which you should all have a copy of in your homes if you don't. But I thought that the Drawdown Georgia project did an excellent job of conveying in simple terms, using iconography, simple categories, of really narrowing down that field of 100. Let's face it, climate is overwhelming, right? And so you have to break it up into chunks that are understandable, that you can set reasonable targets for, that you can collaborate with others on. The 20 that they identified are those that they think we can achieve the most rapid action and success on in Georgia, okay? So you'll notice today that each of our speakers will address at least one, if not more than one, element of these 20 high impact areas. My institution, and I haven't introduced myself yet, I'm Justin Ellis. I'm the program manager at the Office of Sustainability for the University of Georgia. We have a brand new climate solutions program, and we've decided to really adopt this mental model as our approach to explaining what we have done and what we hope to do in the future. And I think that might be of really high utility for other higher education institutions. And they have a very nice color scheme too. So let me tell you a little bit about each of our speakers, and then they have decided they're going to talk from their seats, so we don't have a lot of time swapping out at the podium, which I think is a great idea. Some of these folks I know, and some of them I've had the good fortune of getting to know over the last month and a half, and excellent group of some of the primary leaders in climate solutions in the state. So Jennifer Chirico, you've already heard a lot about her. We're thrilled to have her at Georgia Tech. She's going to talk a little bit about the unique structure that Georgia Tech has gone to in making her, I believe, the first AVP of sustainability at Georgia Tech. And it goes beyond that, and the energy services is actually nestled within sustainability now. We have a little bit of that trend at UGA, where we have our waste reduction services now nestled under our Office of Sustainability as well. It's a good segue to Jeff Benjamin, who's also AVP. So Jennifer's the Associate Vice President of Sustainability. Jeff Benjamin is the AVP of our Facilities Management Division there. And Jeff has done a miraculous job, as you'll hear about in a moment, in bringing electric fleet management into our mindset here at UGA. I hope some of you have seen some of the vehicles out in the courtyard. Art Frazier has been, Art has the best combination of titles because he's the Director of Facilities at Spelman. How many years have you been there, Art? 18 years, with a long history there, but he also is the lead for sustainability at that school. So a lot of our examples today are about infusing sustainability within operations and facilities. We're at a good point in our history to have that. And then a very good friend of mine for quite a number of years, Jamie Mitchem from the University of North Georgia, where I used to have the pleasure of being a faculty, has really done a great job of implementing some examples of assessment of rooftop solar potential there, and actually then implementing those plans as well. So that's our panel. They're going to tell you more details about each of those things. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer Chirico.
Can you guys hear me? Yep. Okay. Well, I know everyone's starting to probably get tired. It's been 2 days of a lot of information coming at you and a lot good information, but hopefully everyone can stay awake for a little bit longer, and then not too much longer. We have the reception, so that'll be fun, and I've heard a play. But I'm happy to be here today. Thank you, Justin, for setting this up and for all the great work that's been done at UGA to make this happen, and through Carbon Drawdown. So I'm going to talk a little bit. As Justin said, I'm relatively new back at Georgia Tech. I did go to Georgia Tech for undergrad and graduate school, but only have been back as a employee just over 6 months. But I did come in as the first Associate Vice President of Sustainability. It was an inaugural position. And there were some unique things that we brought together in getting this started. So I'm going to share a little bit about that, and then kind of talk about how we're implementing different things. So this is our team, which I'm very proud of. So I came in, and previously there was an office of one or two people. So it was one woman who had run, it was an office of campus sustainability. So it was a little more student focused only. And she evolved it more, but she was really working on her own with a few students, sometimes one person or so, and just hard to make things move a lot of times. And so bringing in this position, my boss is the Vice President of Infrastructure and Sustainability. And when I interviewed, I said, the main thing that I want to have is utilities data in our office, because I've been in this field for over 20 years now. And this is the biggest hurdle. And I was at the University of Hawaii. I ran their first sustainability institute. I ended up working with facilities all the time. Then I ran a sustainability consulting company for 10 years. And every client that we worked with, I ended up hiring people just to dive in spreadsheets all the time. And, everyone thinks, oh, sustainability is so sexy, but they'd get in there like, oh, I live in spreadsheets. And I'm like, yeah, but we have to do the numbers to find out what we need to do, right? So if you don't have the data, you don't know what you need to do. And you're kind of, there are some things you can get done, but that's really, you want to be able to, I hate to say you can't manage what you don't measure, but it's so true. And over the years, that is reinforced more and more, because when I go and try to pitch things and say, oh, hey, we should do this project. Well, show me the numbers, show me the money, show me how it's going to work, right? So this is over and over and over again. And having good, robust data is key. So our team, we brought together utilities and data. I'm adding on data. It's the utilities team. And I'm very proud of this team. Has done an amazing job pulling together data for us. And that's Jermaine Klontz. He's over there. He is our leading that team, and done a fantastic, amazing job pulling it all together. We also have Praga, who's with him. They have done our GHG inventory. Amazing. I'm going to show you some of that later. We have Alex Orditz is also here. I have a lot of the team here. Sustainable building. So we're setting up best practices for buildings. Buildings have kind of been status quo, some energy efficiency projects, but really trying to bring all of that together under Alex's leadership and looking at how we can manage them more efficiently, cleaner, healthier, and so forth. We also have the Candida. I added living building because not everyone knows what Candida is. So we had the first living building in the Southeast, and that's Sean Aurora. You might have heard him talk as well here today. So him and his team. And then we also have engagement. So engagement was formerly campus sustainability. So that's bringing together all of our events, outward facing, working with the community, working with the students, setting up those types of things. And this is well, actually, one more thing I want to say is we developed core values, mission, vision in the beginning for our team, because it was bringing together 4 teams basically, right? So this was a challenge, right? Everyone's been used to working independently. Well, what we found was there was a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of overlaps, but coming together. So we developed this, and this was our mission. And I have to look up here because I can't see that one. Our mission is to serve as a collaborative, that's a key word, partner working towards sustainable and equitable solutions for our Georgia Tech community. And I say community because it's not just within Georgia Tech, but it's all of you. It's all the way around the world, really. We want to partner and learn best practices. We want to share our best practices and make Georgia Tech a better place, as well as helping our neighbors and greater community do the same. So this is, I use this, and this was the example that I gave them of how I saw all of our groups coming together. It was like kind of the tree of life and thinking of it. So our foundation is really the utilities and data. So this is where we start from. We have to have this data to move forward and to make good decisions. And I've already talked about that a little bit, but I really see that as core to sustainability. So, and that's not usually in an office of sustainability. I think this is what Justin's referring to. It's very unique. Then we have kind of our tree trunk, which is our infrastructure, and we are an urban campus. So in UGA, not so much. I mean, you have a lot of green space. We don't. We actually do for an urban campus. I shouldn't say we don't, but it's still an urban campus, right? And so we have a lot of buildings, and most of our emissions are coming from buildings. And then we have the bigger tree and all of our branches. That's kind of our outreach and engagement. And then we also have Candida, which is kind of falls on all of these, and it's learning best practices in terms of buildings across the board. And they do tons of outreach all around the world too. So what I'm going to illustrate is the climate action process, because that connects all of these together. So just as an example of how we're all working together. So we recently launched our climate action process. So that's been going on for about 6 months. We're knee deep in it now, very busy. But a few key things. So we did was we set up alignment for our climate action plan with the UN SDGs. We also looked at our Institute strategic plan. We have a sustainability next plan, which you probably heard this morning if you were in the opening session with Beryl, that we've done. That's our sustainability plan for campus. And then we have a comprehensive plan that was just finished for how we're planning to grow. And then the stakeholder engagement piece is really key. So this piece is where everyone gets involved. So we have an advisory task force, and this connects with the sustainability plan of really breaking down those silos where we're engaging with faculty, staff. So it's research. We want to make sure we have research, education, and operations at the table at all times. As a university, we're here to serve students. But as a Research One university, research is actually super powerful. And we've Georgia Tech is a leader in the world in this. So that is a top priority. So from an operations standpoint, we are here to serve research and education essentially, right? And how we can make our buildings, our campus more sustainable and help them to work better by making it a healthier place to be is huge. So we have 9 working groups, and I'm going to share those in a second, but this is people all over campus, our team, there's people in each of the groups. We also have student engagement and doing a lot with that. So we're developing our strategies right now through the working groups. So I don't know if that's not working, just too far. But we're developing strategies, and then we'll model those, set it up, look at the funding options as those strategies come in. And this is again from people all over campus. And then in 2004, moving more toward the implementation process. This was our alignment. And so, you can see the SDG goals. So we looked at those, which ones, and we actually went into the indicators to look at which indicators apply to climate action. And then we looked at our Institute strategic plan, and there's very clear goals. So some of the ones with climate action are lead by example. So setting up our campus as an example, amplifying impact. And then we have a campus comprehensive plan, our sustainability next plan. And then we have a lot of other plans. So there's a lot of planning going on in universities all the time. So we don't want to make that inefficient either. We want to make sure that we're pulling in everything that should go into those pieces. And then for our climate action plan, we have 9 working groups. So again, we have this advisory task force, and then there's about average maybe 8 to 10 people on each working group. And those are happening right now as we speak. And they're developing strategies in all of these specific areas. So these were pulled out of all of those other plans of areas that we needed to place focus on. And again, this is still not just my idea or any one person's. It's a collaborative group. This is our, I already talked about this, so I'm going to skip that, but that's our stakeholder engagement. So a lot of stakeholder engagement now, hoping to pull that together by the end of the summer and move more toward the modeling. This is our greenhouse gas inventory. So the first part of this was developing a greenhouse gas inventory. And that had been done prior to this, me starting and this happening, which was put on the Second Nature platform. But once we started diving into it, we realized that, it was kind of what he said, she said, of different pieces of data from all over. So we had to go back to the drawing board. And this was really led by Jermaine's group. So this is where utilities came into play, right? I could go directly to them and have that conduit to say, like, hey, this is what we need to do. We have all the data. We have all the energy data. We have all the water data. We have everything. And so they rebuilt this from scratch, backed up by all good source data that we have access to. We can easily go back and grab that. If someone asks a question, it's defensible. And this is our utilities team coming in and developing all of this. And now they are the experts in greenhouse gas inventory. That's what everyone should seek to have with their utilities team, is they should be climate experts as well, because they are managing it. And they can come and say, like, hey, energy use is way up, or something's going on here, or this is off, right? And we can make adjustments and take that to leadership. And even our president, I send him quick metrics now from our data, right? Like, here's quick wins, here's quick things that we have. So you can see here that this was a lot of work. Scope 1 is about roughly 25%, and we're working toward trying to electrify campus. So getting off of natural gas and setting it up with heat pumps and so forth. And that's going to move into Scope 2. So that gets into a lot of what we talked about earlier this morning, Scope 2 in Georgia Power. And we're looking at all different options. But again, all of our groups are that are in the Office of Sustainability. They might be managing buildings or, off doing other things, but they're all heavily invested in these goals for climate action and getting to 100% emissions reduction. Our Scope 3 is a work in process. So we talked about that today. And I think even with Google, they're saying how hard it is to track Scope 3. So it's showing, not quite 25% of our total emissions, but we actually think it's much, much higher. And once we get all of the data in, it could be even more than all of it. It's a beast. So, but we started that process, and our utilities and data team is really working toward building that out, making sure that we get accurate, good data, working with procurement, working with our waste folks. We're about to hire a new zero waste person. So this is really key. And I love this chart because it kind of as close to accurate, aside from Scope 3. I feel really good about sharing it, and I don't have concerns. I know our team has done an amazing job. That's a good feeling too, when you can go in and you can, your data is backed up. So I have some other slides on Scope 1. So we've broken it down by Scope 1. Did I miss Scope 2? I think I did. Nope, I did. Sorry about that. We do have Scope 2. Scope 3, and you can see all of the future additions too of things that we need to add. And Praga, who's over here too, he's really been our Scope 3. And even breaking it down, like we have a lot of this data already, but it's like getting all of the data for paper, getting all of the data for food. Clothing is a big one, especially with athletics, right? So our athletics is split up from, there's operations, we have athletics, we have housing, we have dining, right? So there's different groups that we have to work with. So getting this data is time consuming and real to get that. But once we have it, and we have a process moving forward. Computer data, priority spending, and then embodied. So we have new construction and vehicle, but we're also starting to look at electronics. So there's some researches at Tech looking at embodied carbon of just, everyone having computers on campus and how much that is, and all of the technology. And then with waste, looking at reuse. So there's a lot of different things that go into scope 3. And so you can imagine that is, when you have a huge university and all of the data that goes into that, it's a big task and a big lift, and something that we'll be doing over the next few years. But then again, going back to that collaboration, to get all of this, we have to work together and we have to partner across campus with all of the different groups and collaborate with them. So our next steps, we are going to continue our CAP engagement that goes through the end of July, roughly. Developing the mitigation strategies is what we're doing now. Aligning, modeling, and identifying funding for them will be next. And then finalizing the plan by the end of this year. And then we will move toward implementation over the next 27 years. So our goal is by 2050. And then I have embraced continuous feedback loop. So this is something, and I would say we do this with our team in the Office of Sustainability probably once a month. So once a month, we meet and we go back through, like looking at our goals and looking at what's changed and looking at how we need to modify. Do we need to put someone new on it? What's new, right? So this is something that each month there's new things, new technology, new information coming out, new happenings, new people starting, right? So there's so many new things, and I feel strongly that even though you have a plan, it's so you got to modify based and stay up to date with real times. When we try to stick with something that's old, even now, Beryl and I were looking at our Sustainability Next plan, which was completed last year, and we're like, so much has already changed since then. We're trying to just to finalize it, make it pretty, and get it graphically designed. And we're like, wow, so much has changed. We got to go back and change stuff before we publish it. This was just last year. So I think that this is an important process for any teams, is to constantly reevaluate what worked, what didn't, how can we improve, and then reevaluating the whole CAP plan every 5 years. That'd be kind of the plan. Is, well, right now it'd probably be 2030, 2035 update. And again, even hearing from Georgia Power as they clean their grid, that could change things and what we need to do quite significantly, actually, whether they're meeting their goals or they're not. So we're kind of got to pay close attention to them. We're having a vulnerability assessment done this fall. So that is Jairo Garcia, if anyone met him. He's at Georgia Tech, amazing. And he has offered to do our vulnerability assessment, which has not been done. So looking at vulnerable populations and infrastructure, natural resources on campus, and then doing a resiliency plan. So just 2 quick things. If you haven't done one yet, if you haven't done a CAP plan, you should do a vulnerability assessment first. This was done in the wrong order. I started after, so it was like, where's the vulnerability assessment? It never was done. So we're doing it now, so that's good. But typically you would want to do that first to see where you need to focus your efforts and who's most vulnerable. But we are doing that. And then if we need to, we'll do another resiliency plan next year. And then just continuing to build out our dashboard. We're trying to get a public dashboard set up, and also modified data for faculty and students and researchers so that they can self-serve, grab data as needed from campus operations. So they can do research, they can do student projects. Right now they contact us, and we have to go through a process to get that data for them, which can be very time consuming on our staff. But really making it, that's what we're calling it, the living campus. So making it available, making it easy for people to do research and find best practices on our campus. Policy, governance. So JEDI I have, and that's Alex is standing up our Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council for our Office of Sustainability that will serve all of infrastructure and sustainability, developing partnerships. And then we're doing green workforce development. So that we talked about that this morning as well, but that one is, we're working on a big grant, and whether we get that or not, we're still moving forward. There's a lot of areas of this where we do need significant green workforce development in our state as well as on our campuses for people to come in that have updated skills and can implement a lot of these things. So, and this is our task force. So a lot of actually a huge majority of these folks are here today from Georgia Tech. They're not all in the room, but they're here. You can see Marilyn Brown, I think she presented earlier, and Dan Matisoff, and so a lot of folks. So that, I hope I didn't go over, Justin. Did I?
And the mic and the clicker to
Oh,
Jeff.
yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, you give me a lot to follow up on. Well, yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here today. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. When I think back to my career, which started many years ago, I'm not going to elaborate on how many. I was in the military, I was in the Navy, and we started talking about green this, sustainability that, this was, late 90s, early 2000s. And I would go to a conference and there might be a session on this kind of topic. And now to see a whole conference or multiple conferences around the country dedicated to this, it's really come a long way. And from an operational standpoint, which is really where I spent most of my career in facility management, construction, and maintenance and operations, we've always looked for, how do we incorporate these ideas, and how do we win people over to, more importantly, financing these ideas. It's always been the challenge is, there's plenty of great ideas out there, but not always enough money to get them, or there may not be a grant for it, or that sort of thing. So fast forward a few years, I'm stationed at Marine Corps Logistics Base, Albany, Georgia, and I'm the new public works officer, and I'm reporting down there, and they've got this initiative to go to net zero for electricity consumption. And I'm thinking to myself, that's insane. There's no way we're going to get there. That's impossible. And it was myself, my boss, my chief engineer, an analyst, and I had a sustainability person who Eddie Hunt, who got numerous awards from the military for his efforts in doing this over the years. He was like, every year he got the same award for all of this. But recently those articles came out that, this year they were certified as net zero. So it took 13 years to get there. But those seeds were planted and they achieved it. And it's quite a significant accomplishment for them. So, how did we do that? Well, looking back and how those principles have been applied is, demonstrating how we can take these principles and show that we can operate more efficiently, take those resources that we have and expand them and make them more efficient. And that's really how I've won allies to these ideas. And so, Justin asked me to talk about our fleet electrification. And sadly to say, you're looking at my fleet electrification up there right now. That's the sum total of it. So I don't want him to, oversell me here, but how did we get there? Well, I stepped in here a year and a half ago, and we looked at our fleet, and facility management division has roughly 350 or so vehicles, maybe a few more or a few less. And they're all very old and very broken and not efficient and use a lot of gas. And some of them don't have floorboards. One of them was affectionately referred to as the sloppy jalopy in our waste reduction services group. Shout out to them for doing all the great things they're doing with the bigger resources that they have. So it was very easy for me to say, well, here's our resource for this. Now we just have to make a determination of what we're going to do. So being the boss, I get to say things like, we're going to make sure that if we buy a vehicle, the first vehicle we look at is going to be electrical or an EV vehicle. And if that's not available, then we're going to look at hybrids, or we're going to do those sorts of things. So it was very simple, low hanging fruit, but it helped to create a culture within the department in a very short amount of time. And part of that is doing really cool wraps. We get with our strategic marketing folks, and they come up with these great graphics to put on our vehicles. And now it is, if there is a vehicle on campus that is in high demand, it's one of those two. And they're Kia Niros. They're not like luxury vehicles by any means, but they draw the eye. People love to drive these vehicles. And as we drive them around campus, it creates buzz and it generates interest in what we're doing. And it's really tied into a number of different initiatives, because if you look at that, you think, oh, well, they're just electrifying their fleet. Well, it's actually more than that, because as we electrify that fleet, we're looking at our operations. And part of what has driven our inventory in the past has been how we operated, where maybe I have to send my technician out on town to get parts. Well, why am I doing that? First of all, I'm paying him to fix stuff, or her to fix stuff, not buy parts, right? I pay somebody else to buy parts. And so why are they spending an hour or two out on town doing this? It's taken away from the time that they could fix it. So we started evaluating our warehouse operations and the things that we're keeping in the warehouse and what we're stocking and how we're able to now drop inventory where people need it instead of having somebody go out on town and buy stuff. So there's a whole culmination in how we invest these things and how they tie together, which is very interesting. And from an operational standpoint, it presents challenges. So how do we overcome those challenges? Well, one of those is people's unwillingness to necessarily adopt change. How many people own an electric vehicle? Okay. How long have you owned it? Okay, so not an early adopter, but an adopter nonetheless. Yeah, so there's still a lot of people that are still kind of, I don't know if I want to go out and buy it, but you know, it's coming, and it's taken time to socialize it. Well, imagine 700 people who have been doing things a certain way for the last 20 years, and then now you're telling them we're going to change that. It's not easy. So in addition to the operational changes, the marketing and everything else, we've got to socialize this change within the organization and explain to them why we're doing these things, getting leaders into change management classes so they understand how to manage change as we do these things. So it's a very all-encompassing effort, and it's very exciting, but it all just came down to a simple decision of saying, yeah, this is what we're going to do, and being in a position to be able to do that. So very thankful to have that opportunity. But again, I don't want Justin to oversell what I've done so far. The next part kind of comes to our grounds electrification, or our green zone. And I don't know if y'all had the opportunity around lunchtime to go out and check these things out. But this is another one that was very reluctantly adopted, I think, when I came up with the idea. And I don't want to take credit for coming up with the idea. I did not invent this idea. This was actually an idea that had come to us from several sustainability students and from a number of faculty who really are annoyed by the sound that our equipment makes during the day when their students are in class. And I can appreciate that. So the thought was, well, these are quieter. This will make things better. But again, from an operational standpoint, if I've got scarce resources to invest in equipment, I want to make sure that I'm investing those resources where they're going to have the best return. So we agreed to do a pilot in one of our zones, and it's the green zone. It's a central zone on campus. It's a relatively large area, but lots of trees, lots of opportunity to use the equipment, lawns, and everything else. And we made a determination that we were going to partner with our sustainability department, maybe find a student to help compile the data, analyze it, look at it, and see how well this was performing for us. And I will say, the data is not quite in yet because we didn't get this implemented until April because of supply chain issues. Again, COVID or whatever, trying to get parts and materials and things has been a nightmare. But once we finally got all the equipment, we were able to start doing the study. And just anecdotally from the individuals who are using this, it's very well received. A lot of reluctance at first, but once they started using the equipment, seeing how it functioned, some of the other zones are now wondering when they're going to get theirs. So a very, very good word of mouth story. And then the other part of this, and again, partnering with our sustainability department and our interns over there, is if you look at the vehicle up on top, there's that metal thing that you kind of look there. That's a solar panel. And the idea is, we were concerned about having the ability to get through the day with enough batteries so we didn't have to keep running back to the central shop to get batteries and charge them. So our students, a mechanical engineering, electrical engineering student, designed the solar array, the charging package, put it on this, fitted it out, and now they have the ability to kind of charge as they go during the day, depending on the day if it's not, very sunny. But it's just that kind of thought process, which again leads me to the other part of our sustainability program and how we partner with the academic aspects of our university. These students are doing things that are just blowing me away. I went to my first semester review last year, and I was thinking to myself, when I was a junior in college, what was I doing? And it was not what they're doing. I'll just tell you that right now. They are some of the brightest students I've ever met. They're enthusiastic, they're driven, they're coming up with great ideas, and being able to partner with them in our department and glean those ideas and operationalize them has been a tremendous pleasure. So that's in a nutshell kind of where we're at, and I'll leave the rest for questions and answers. Oh, sorry, that's our green phone. Yeah, next one.
Left one on the table. Right? All right. So as Justin said, I'm Art Frazier with Spelman College, and great presentations. And one of the things that I tend to do is multiply myself through others. Over the years, I've borrowed a lot of things from what Georgia Tech has done, what Emory has done, what Agnes Scott has done, and what UGA has done. So I'll be in touch to get you some information on what you're doing. My ground supervisor is very interested in hearing about what you're doing with the green zone, because our faculty too complain about the noise of mowers. So what I am going to talk to you about, another way that we multiply ourselves through others, we've done several initiatives with the assistance of nonprofits to help us achieve things. I always tell people Spelman is relatively small. It's 1/10 the size of Georgia Tech, and we have 1/10 of the workforce of Georgia Tech, which is why all these responsibilities fall under me. But one initiative that we've done was with a nonprofit called Eco Action, who helped us explore improving collection of stormwater on our campus so as to not affect the Proctor Creek watershed that is downhill from our campus. Another one was through the Community Foundation, who was partnering with Candida and South Face to do a Grants to Green program. And Spelman is neighbors with several other colleges, Morehouse College, Morehouse School of Medicine, Clark Atlanta, that form the Atlanta University Center Consortium. And collectively, we received a Grants to Green campus grant for all 4 campuses, where with funding from the Community Foundation, really Candida, and Coca-Cola Foundation, we were able to jointly implement $2 million worth of energy efficiency projects on our 4 campuses. The one I'm going to focus on, though, is with a nonprofit out of DC called Groundswell. Along with Groundswell, we applied for a grant from DOE, where we worked with the Atlanta University Consortium, Partnership for Southern Equity, Georgia Power, and NREL to design a microgrid for resiliency for the Atlanta University Center, and also a microgrid for resiliency for the Atlanta University Center neighborhood that surrounds our campuses. So this all started, unfortunately, during the pandemic, because one of our field trips, actually several of our field trips were to be to NREL's Zero Energy facility in Golden, Colorado. But instead we got a virtual site to tour. But we studied potential solar sites throughout the Atlanta University Center on all 4 campuses. And what we really wanted to achieve is to have a place, should we have an unfortunate extended power outage, where students from the Atlanta University Center could take refuge. Unfortunately, in May of 2016, on a Saturday night just before finals, we lost power on campus for about 14 hours. We share a library together, and students leaving the library came back to our campus. And I don't have exterior emergency lighting, so they came to a dark campus, and they didn't have electricity to charge their laptops, their phones. They didn't have cold water. They didn't have air conditioning. So this would provide a place where they could go to get those things should we have a repeat event. So we looked at what we settled in on is Morehouse and Spelman are side by side. On the north side of the entrance drive to our campus is a parking deck that Morehouse College owns, right adjacent to a parking deck on the south side of our entrance that we own. The plan is to place a solar array on that parking deck that is owned by Morehouse College, along with fuel cells. And during the day when the solar is, that's the last one. Okay. During the day when the solar is not charging the fuel cells, the solar would power a network of buildings on Morehouse's campus adjacent to their parking deck. And in the event of an emergency, the fuel cells would power our Manly College Center, which is like our student center with cafeteria and with spaces for students to spend time in. And we are continuing to work with Groundswell to seek funding for this. One of the things that we're discussing now is ownership. And we're probably looking to have a third party own and operate this, given the technology that's involved and so forth. And there's companies out there with that expertise already instead of us having to bring it in-house. So this is an opportunity that wouldn't have happened without the help of Groundswell. So we're very appreciative for the partnership that they brought to us and look forward to further partnerships. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jamie Mitchem from University of North Georgia. I'm coming from kind of a different perspective, and I was asked to basically describe the process for getting rooftop solar at University of North Georgia from the faculty side. So I work with a lot of wonderful facilities folks and administrators to make that happen. I can't see my slide, but I'm going to try. So the timeline of the process is one thing I want to talk about is I had the great pleasure of being elected faculty senate chair, which is a very challenging voluntary position, but important. And one of our faculty way back there, John O'Sullivan, had introduced a motion years before I was on faculty senate to create a sustainability office. And ultimately the president of the university created a sustainability committee, which Justin Ellis actually chaired for several years, and was able to set priorities for the university, ultimately applied a STARS report and got us bronze certification. We're working towards silver, and kind of put sustainability on the radar as something we can do at UNG, and that it's beneficial, not just environmentally, but economically and socially and educationally. So seeing this holistically, I think was important to get buy-in from administration. So the way the solar happened was when I became chair of faculty senate, people knew I was interested in sustainability, and I think they saw an opportunity. And one of the senators presented a motion to create a committee, an ad hoc committee, to see if solar would be viable on any of our campuses. We have 5 campuses across North Georgia. Our 2 largest are in Dahlonega and Gainesville. I work on the Gainesville campus. And so we passed that motion at the faculty senate, and I worked with him. That was Thomas Vogel, who I appointed as chair of the committee since he asked for it. And we found the faculty that were probably most interested and had expertise in this area. 4 of them were engineers in different departments, physics, and I work in the Institute for Environmental and Spatial Analysis, so they're environmental engineers. They had experience in other countries, so China, Scandinavia, different regions of the world, India, and had implemented these types of systems in the past. So using their knowledge, we also included facilities on the committee. Even though they're not part of the faculty senate, we knew that that was going to be the group to implement any decision made. So we wanted them there from the start to help inform the decision. And I am so grateful for the advice to do that, because I think one thing we're seeing here is collaborations are key across the university. And I would have been hesitant, thinking maybe facilities didn't want to talk to faculty, or, you know, we're just kind of in our silos sometimes. So that was really educational for me, is that these partnerships are just the key to getting action done on campus. So Adam Strzeminski is in our facilities, and he was also our sustainability officer, and he was pivotal in making it happen. In our AVP of facilities at the time, Ken Crow, was the person that then took the report that the committee produced and implemented it. He got the funding and worked through the budgeting process to acquire the solar panels and have those installed on a rooftop. So work with your facilities folks, people, is what I would encourage you to do. And the committee met, it began right before the pandemic, and we met with the vendors before the pandemic really started, and then they continued their work. So it timed out just right, where we got to meet with some of the vendors ahead of time. Ultimately, Georgia Power was the vendor we went with, because they included maintenance in their proposal, which was key, and they were a little cheaper. And so that was key for administrators, I believe. The image you see on the right is some work our GIS folks did, where they looked at every building on the Dahlonega and Gainesville campuses, the size of the rooftops, whether they were flat or not, the roofs, their southern exposure, the amount of shade. So they were trying to find the best rooftop location to do this as a pilot project, and the cost and the kilowatt hours that could be produced on each rooftop. And the brightest rooftops on that bottom image were formerly Lanier Tech. Lanier Tech built an entirely new campus, and UNG was able to acquire that campus, which was across the street from Gainesville. And one of those buildings is the one we decided to do, because, I think it's on the next slide, and this went live, by the way, I can't see it up there, but 2020, late 2020, I believe. So the building we decided to do is called the Health Sciences Building. It's one of the former Lanier Tech buildings. It already had some solar panels on it, 62. They had a solar installation program at Lanier Tech for training people to install solar panels. So they left theirs behind when they acquired their new property. Thank you, Lanier Tech. And we added 125 more panels to that. So we have a solar array on that rooftop now. And I always say trust but verify. So I went to Google Earth, and the image on the left is when we acquired it. It was under construction. And the image on the right, you can see those two kind of areas of a lot of solar panels. So we verified, right? There are more panels on there. I took some images from the ground here, just from Google Maps, to show, you know, you can barely see them. They're not tilted very high, but they're there. The cost of this was it's up there, I think somewhere 80 something thousand dollars, and those should last 20 to 25 years, and return on investment was 9 years. That was key, that, you know, these would have a positive ROI. Anything else here? Oh, the other key decision why that building was Dahlonega was a challenge, because a lot of the buildings there are not individually metered, so it's hard to get a demand for energy on those older buildings. So they're working on metering each of the buildings now to prepare that for the future. These two buildings were powered by Jackson EMC, whereas the rest of campus is powered by Georgia Power, and Jackson EMC rates were a little bit higher. So economically, it made more sense to put the solar panels there, right, to save the most money. So I'm a data nerd, so here's some data. And the AVP actually Adam from facilities, he shared with me the dashboard that he uses. So I just pulled some data here. The top right graph is one day, May 3rd of this year, and it shows the amount of solar power generated from that rooftop. And so I like to use it in my weather and climate class to show look, when do you have the most solar energy? What time of the day? And that was a clear day. You get that bell-shaped curve on clear days. When it's cloudy, you have a very jagged graph when the clouds cover the sky. And then I have a month there, the last month, April, showing day by day, you know, when it was clear and when it was cloudy. So maximizing about 400 kilowatt hours per day. What does that mean? So I looked up what an average house uses. It's about a little over 800 kilowatt hours per month, and we're producing 400 kilowatt hours per day on maximum. So that's pretty good. I was happy to see that it's generating, you know, a decent amount of energy. Ultimately, our next goal is to add some of these to the Blue Ridge campus, which is our smallest campus, but a goal is to make it autonomous as far as energy. So we're working on that, trying to get funding there. Here's the annual results. So you can see for the last full year, 2022, how much electricity was generated, cost savings, 60 something, I think, tons of carbon emissions avoided. And then the total, the last three bullets there are from when this was installed to yesterday, basically, how much money's been saved, which does fit with the nine-year return on investment. That's if electric rates don't increase, right? If they increase, then we actually get that return sooner. So there's some assumptions in that. And they will, yes, they've already, I think I saw it in the paper yesterday. So yes, it'll probably be a shorter return time than that. And then how many kilowatt hours we've produced and how much carbon we've avoided. So I'm just thrilled that at we're a state university, which is very different than an R1, that we're able to do this with our core mission being education, smaller, I guess, on research than Georgia Tech for sure. But that there's a commitment to it at all levels, from the president on down to faculty, and that it was achievable. So if you're at another state university or state college, there's hope, and I'm happy to help, you know, in any way that I can. I know I see some people from Georgia Climate Project and other universities that have worked on similar things. And so we all commiserate sometimes, but we also help each other with, you know, advice of how to do this. Other solar and transportation related items for Georgia Drawdown, we use an electric vehicle on campus to deliver intra-campus mail. So there's a picture of it. We have one of those sun following solar trees that we acquired from Lanier Tech too. We had to buy an inverter to get that back up and running. We have electric charging stations on at least 3 of our campuses now. We have a lot of these solar phone charging stations now, which are very visible. I will say I don't know some being used a whole lot, but they're very visible. So it's a good project for the public to see. We have our solar powered street lights, which save a lot of energy as well, because those lights stay on a lot of the night. And then just to show you, there's a lot of other sustainability work going on at UNG. So we are very active. I just packed everything up there. But from our STARS report to the work of the Environmental Leadership Center in Dahlonega and Institute for Environmental Spatial Analysis in Gainesville, we compost our grass clippings and leaf litter. We have bicycle racks. Earth Day was back to normal this year, which was wonderful to see, with a lot of activity again on campus. We're top in the nation for replacing plastic straws in a campaign that was nationwide. So one that's not as sexy sometimes, but it's had some of the biggest impact, was upgrading our HVAC systems. That has saved a tremendous amount of electricity and money and reduced carbon emissions. So those systems are expensive, and when you can update those and make them more efficient, it's just been a tremendous, I think, asset for the university. And then we have we're a Tree Campus USA. We plant trees every Arbor Day. We have community gardens on Cumming campus, Dahlonega campus, at the Appalachian Studies Center, Gainesville, Oconee. So 4 of our 5 campuses have community gardens. I'm missing some other stuff I can't see up there. Recycling, yeah, so our recycling program, Justin was instrumental in getting that up and running. Really difficult on 5 campuses that are spread across a large geographic area, because we can't just use one vendor. Each campus has kind of a different person that picks up the recycling. So that's quite a challenge, actually. And to think about this holistically, we're also a storm ready community. So just being sustainable in many ways right now, just environmentally, I think is key. And that includes some of our diversity initiatives at UNG as well. And then we also have grant work with EPA and other groups to try to increase awareness in the region about the importance of clean water, clean air, and trees. All right, and I think that is it.
Great, terrific. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. I might have been a little over ambitious in wanting to have breakout groups today and a big strategy session on what we can do in Drawdown Georgia higher ed. But what's most important right now is I do want to allow at least 10 minutes for y'all to ask questions of the group. If we have a little bit of time to strategize as a group on some collaborative priorities, we can do that. But questions for anyone on the panel. And if you could either stand up or speak up when you have a question. Jason Perry. As the person who built GA's greenhouse gases, it looks a lot like yours, and the breakdown is very similar. The scope 3 stuff is a lot of work. And Jeff is a breath of fresh air in terms of a lot of good stuff now, but we all report to the same. Where do you get the directive to dedicate staff time to getting into the weeds of scope 3 emissions, where we're at a university where 12 years ago, there was a president who wants to cut those greenhouse gases. Status of concern having a comparative time.
Actually, you have a lot of carbon sequestration, so yours would be good.
So where does that come from, and how do you, without a top-down directive, how do you justify it?
Well, that's a good question, because I think that that's a hard thing for most universities. And I think even in our group, we've had these groups come together, but everyone still has their other duties, right? And so I think that's what you're getting at. It's like you have all these other things on your plate, and how do you get that done? I think, and Jermaine is back there and he could speak to the inventory more, but from my perspective, well, one, our president is very supportive. So he is put together an institute strategic plan. It has a lot of sustainability focus that goes down to the sustainability plan. And then my boss, who's the VP of Infrastructure and Sustainability, is so supportive of all of this. And we've actually been behind in sustainability. I probably shouldn't say that out loud, but I think there's certain things we're way ahead, right? We have Candida. We have a lot of really cool things. We've done amazing with like stormwater runoff. There's some things that we're leaps and bounds ahead. And then there's other things we aren't. And so it's just bringing everything up to a balance, and the importance of that is directed from higher above. And so I have a little more bandwidth to be able to work on this. But then in terms of the just the GHG inventory, we got to where we could get to it, of feeling really good and complete. And then we have scope 3 left. And right now we're bringing on an intern to help us look at actually a capstone project. We have a lot of capstone projects. So this is where we started going to students now and looking at different areas. So one student is doing the JEST certification, which is part of for Living Futures, right? And then we have another student doing a zero waste gap analysis for certification. We have another student doing embodied carbon. So there are different areas where we're trying to bring in more students, and that's part of the living campus that I mentioned with data. So it's bringing them into our team. I think the other thing is we have achieved more efficiencies across our team. So when we get together, we're like, the question I always ask is, what do you, who wants to do this? We look at all of the goals for everything, and you might be, and I'll say under Jermaine there's another guy named David. He's a utilities analyst, and he has really always been just focused on utilities, right? But then we'll have all these goals and events, and he's ended up like stepping up to help with all these events, right? So it's not that much of his time, but then someone else is helping in other ways. So there's kind of this cross collaboration that happens that I think creates more efficiencies to be able to do more. And so it's allocating a little more time for some of these things. But people are still continuing their job. And I would invite Jermaine to speak up for that too. Jermaine, if you want to. You're loud talker. I know you don't have that.
So I would say it is a large time commitment, and I do have my existing job. I would say our team is very passionate about sustainability. And for me, I'm very passionate about protecting Georgia because I was born and raised here. So we find time to make time. We also drink a lot of coffee.
And we do a lot of social events. We've started doing more social things and just helping each other and really team building. So there's a supportive, happy environment, that I think helps too. And like people want to jump in and help. So. Jermaine, one more thing.
No, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I'm very passionate about on-site PV. I'm very passionate about stormwater management, and also the electrification of fleets and equipment. However, if you look at this from the view of carbon neutrality, these strategies have a very small impact on your overall greenhouse gas inventory. So could you guys, anybody on the panel, provide insight of how you're able to sell these ideas and how did you prioritize the strategies that you Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I can discuss solar specifically. So I think with solar, coming from my background, I was viewing this environmentally and idealistically. And when I started talking to other faculty and especially practitioners, the economics of it, I think, is a big driver. If you can look at long-term choices and also the educational mission of every university, how this can be used. Can you just put up a screen that shows, right now this solar panel is generating this much electricity, offsetting this much carbon. I think that's very beneficial too. So one thing we're trying to do is we have this new Highlands to Islands trail that's going to come through campus from Gainesville to Lake Lanier Islands. And we're trying to put a bunch of things like facing that trail so people can see, oh, here's a permeable parking lot. How does that differ from pavement? Here's our solar panels. How much electricity are they generating? So we're trying to use that as an educational opportunity, that little stretch that comes through our campus. So I think making things visible to raise awareness and dealing with economics has been something that really helps at our university specifically.
So I wish I had a really pithy answer to give to you on how great it is to do some of this stuff and how easy it is to come up with these justifications. But I will say this. The approach that I've always taken, whether it has been when I was in the Navy or with the City of Houston, University of Houston, or here, is taking a bite of the apple one at a time. It's very easy to, it's great to have the goals. Don't get me wrong, the goals are great, but operationally speaking, a lot of times certain technologies aren't developed enough to where you can bring them on board, operationalize them in a cost-effective way. So that, I had a boss, I think, and I'm sure other people have heard this, but first time I heard it was when I was working for the City of Houston. And he says, I don't mind being on the leading edge, but I don't want to be on the bleeding edge. And what he meant by that was there are certain times when you adopt technologies and it is more detrimental to your effort because they fail or they don't live up to the billing. I think, from our perspective, we're, in different areas, like you said, there's areas we're really way up there, and there's areas where we're lagging behind, and EV is one of those areas for us. And I think that, if I was to go to the president and say, I need, and if I was to electrify my whole fleet at this point in time, it would probably be $70, $80 million. That's a building. He's not going to give me that kind of money to electrify my fleet. I mean, I got to be realistic about it, right? But realizing that every year I have to recapitalize a certain amount of my vehicles, it just makes sense that I go towards the EV at a bite at a time. And it may take me 10, 15 years to get there, but at the end of that 10 or 15 years, I'm there. And yeah, it's not as sexy as, you know, having this great big win that I can hang on my wall and say, I've done this. But, you know, at the end of my career, it's the little things that I've done that have amounted to a lot of big things. And I think that's the attitude and approach that I've had in my strategy to get some of these things done, just because I recognize that it's hard to get those resources set aside to do some of these things. But doing little things like HVAC, you know, when I was in the military at Marine Corps Logistics Base Albany, we had a ton of air conditioning systems that had to be replaced because they were end of life, they were broken, they needed to be replaced. Well, we had the opportunity at that point in time to take that money and invest in something that maybe was a little bit more efficient. It cost more, but it was more efficient for us. But at the end of the day, after we did all these things over the course of 10 years, we created a significant amount of reduction. So, I mean, that's the approach that we take. And again, I'm sorry, it's not a you know, the right answer for every single situation. It's like simple, but that's kind of the approach that I've always managed to put in place.
That reminded me with the solar as well. What facilities is planning now at UNG is prioritizing which rooftops would be next. And it's basically when renovations would occur or when new construction happens, that's your opportunity to do the rooftop solar in the most cost-effective way. And then getting SGA or students to back you up is really powerful as well.
Have one more comment. Another key factor in doing some of these things is using other people's money. If you can find other people's money to do some of these things, it makes all the difference. You know, grants or renovation projects, capital renovation projects, where you say, well, we're going to do this capital renovation. When we do that, we want to do these things and then build that into the project. It does wonders for your effort in achieving these goals.
I actually was going to say the same thing. And with the project that we're exploring, that's really the opportunity to design it came through a grant from DOE. And if we are able to realize it, it'll be because someone else is paying for it. The other piece that helped with that too is it has a curriculum tie-in. We worked with the other campuses to develop curriculum that the students can then learn about this new technology. One of my consultants never wants to be the first implementer. He wants to be the second successful implementer. And a former colleague of mine who was campus architect at Georgia Tech had a different perspective in that he felt at Tech, because the nature of their students and the research institute, that brought value, that it was more than just the ROI. I haven't had that luxury. And I have some of the lowest electrical costs around, that solar never made good sense economically. What made more sense is making my buildings more efficient. So since I report to the CFO and I like my job, I focused on making the buildings more efficient instead of spending more for solar. But now we are looking at having others place solar on our campus as one way of approaching getting that green energy. Do have a solar powered golf cart though.
We've got less than 5 minutes. What I'd like to do with those remaining 5 minutes is crunch this wonderful idea of having all these brainstormings thrown out into 4 or 5 minutes. What we've done today is shared and hopefully inspired each other with some folks who are working really hard in this realm. So kind of the first bullet point, we've shared needs, but we've also shared success stories and a little bit on challenges. The purpose of this whole event is to foster collaboration, right? And so I'd like to hear from you all, take the heat off this panel for a second, on the types of areas that you feel like higher ed in particular would really like to collaborate on. But collaboration is just a step. So collaboration would be if Jeff reached out to Jennifer about data, Jennifer reached out to Jamie about rooftop solar. Partnerships are taking collaboration a step further. That's really saying we're invested in this solution on the Drawdown Georgia scale for the long term, and we want to partner with you because we think our partnership will advance this further. So I just wanted to paint that kind of mental picture and then say, what do you guys want to do within higher ed in the next year to 3 years? What should be some priorities that might really set the tone for this type of session next conference? Just a very difficult question to end the day with. Jason.
Initially thinking within the USG, but it really should be design and construction standards, templates or guides, and they're going to be different for every campus, but fundamental. So specifics of solar submitted to our big, 7-page document like that. That built lots of stuff. That's another. Yeah. That's a repeat of something somebody else did with USU done. I looked at Georgia Tech's yellow book and I didn't see that, so you may want to grab one. But it's not proprietary information. They can also share. It might be worthwhile to share that as sort of one of the pushbacks that we get. Rooftop solar campus is rooftop screwdriver. We gotta ask them to comply with code, right? Yeah, let's put all this stuff down on paper. Yeah, it's in the state.
USG schools don't have anything like that right now. I'm assuming any kind of shared.
I mean, there's not a USG
Right there. I just wanted to comment on that, and I would love to chat with you because we are in the process of trying to update our yellow book. This has just come up in the last few weeks, so but it's a great idea.
It's the last section.
Yeah.
Page 719.
Very specific in memory.
Great. One priority identified. Who else wants to throw one out?
I'll add to that. So for many years now, we've not been pursuing LEED certification in the state of Georgia with state funding. Rules have changed, and that's a possibility again. So I think that might be an interesting conversation along with those updated design and construction guidelines to reconsider in the state of Georgia and with state funded facilities pursuing LEED certification.
What are the challenges currently to that, other than the old 2015 law that has now been removed as an obstacle?
Probably legacy
Carryover of that, yeah.
carryover from that, and others may have other insight as to why that's still challenging. But I think it's still political. But the rules have changed, and it's a possibility.
Is that of interest to the panel?
Our VP at Georgia Tech, Maria Simaluga, has been involved for projects and Latin first time. So, I think it's just about having the right leadership to say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And so that might be a partnership. Like, pointing at Georgia Tech and saying Georgia Tech is doing it, we can do it too, might not always work. But in some cases, it could be beneficial.
I'll just add to really quick, just to tag on to Alex. I know Mike's waiting too, but is that we also have the Candida building, the living building, and Sean is moving more in a role of policy focused. And this could be a help for everyone in Georgia of looking at like where we can change policy on campus and at the state level to help support a lot of these initiatives. So, and we definitely, that's the goal, is to share with our partners what we can do. And that's from the living building. So even higher level, like What are some baseline? Obviously, we can't create all new living buildings or even come close to that, but even just best practices, like here's some best practices around water that need, there's some policy issues around the water, right? Is a big one. So that's just an example. And then
Did you have
Yeah.
something, Jeff?
Well, I was just going to say, building facilities for universities, higher education, or the state in general is a unique challenge in and of itself. I mean, if you're a developer and you build a tower someplace, a high rise apartment building, whatever, you're probably building that with the idea that it's an investment. You're probably going to sell it off to somebody for some money at some point in time. I don't know about y'all, but nobody gets rid of buildings at the University of Georgia. I mean, you just walk on our campus, we have 200-year-old buildings sitting right across the way there. So we have to build buildings a lot differently in terms of total cost of ownership. And I think, LEED does a lot to help us with that in a lot of ways. It's not the perfect answer, but it gets us thinking in terms of the total life cycle of that building and that investment. And yeah, it may be a little bit more expensive up front, but those investments up front pay dividends over the life of that building. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we have is doing that, and not all policymakers necessarily see it that way.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm the sustainability director of Auburn, University of Auburn, Alabama.
All right, War
I
Eagle.
know you all think about Alabama. This is one case where I get to say, well, guess what? So we have the same problem in Alabama. We did have state blocking us from building these buildings, but the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a commitment to build at a minimum LEED Silver certified buildings for all Board of Trustee approved projects. And what we've found is that you can build a LEED Silver building for the same cost as a non-certified building if you do a pre-designed sustainability workshop, you have project managers and contractors who know what they're doing, who have the commitment. The difference is the cost of LEED registration and doing things that really are just responsible to do. And then add to that, a couple of years, 3 or 4 years ago, there was a cognitive function study done by the Chan School of Public Health at Harvard. And they found an eye-popping 26% improvement in cognitive ability in green certified buildings, a 30% reduction in sick building syndrome, and even improved sleep scores. We just brought online a new lab and classroom building this year, and guess what? Test scores have gone up in that building. So it's a specific, and if we're about anything in higher education, it's about cognitive ability. So I think if we have a standard of excellence, and let's face it, a LEED Silver building is not an excellent building. It's a good building. And if we're investing in our students and our intellectual capacity, I think it's a minimum expectation we should have. So it's not that high a hurdle, really, once you get past the political mindset.
I think that is an outstanding place to end it, or we can all go outside and keep this conversation going. We've got another session coming up in here at 4:30. I think we just started to open up something really interesting, which is this is very tight dialogue. So you can count on more of this hopefully at next conference, if not before. We may have something before. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the session. We got something coming up in here.